Perfect. Hello, welcome everyone to the PinkUn YouTube channel. Of course, we're coming to you in the midst of another signing. Norwich City made plenty of these already. Oliver Skipp is the latest through the door on loan from Tottenham Hotspur. So we thought who better to get insight off than Evening Standard journalist Dan Kilpatrick. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. If you could just give us a brief sort of view of Ollie Skipp as a player, I guess. What sort of player are Norwich City inheriting for this season?
Well, it's not totally clear what kind of player he is yet because he hasn't played enough. He only played 105 minutes for Spurs last season. But I mean, look, essentially he's a holding midfield player, or that's where he wants to play. I've heard people at Spurs describe him as a kind of cross between Eric Dyer when he was a midfielder and Harry Winks. From what I've seen, he is good on the ball. He always shows for it. He wants the ball at his feet, and he's quick at moving it on. He's tidy at moving it on. He also gets stuck in to an extent. I wouldn't say he's a kind of destroyer or a battler really, but look, he's not shy in the tackle. We haven't seen too much of him in a Spurs shirt, kind of pushing on into the final third yet. That might be something he has an opportunity to do for Norwich in the Championship, but he hasn't really done that yet. So, yeah, it's kind of tricky to say. I mean, the other thing that's probably worth saying is he spent a lot of the restart training at right back, so he is versatile. The Spurs were short of cover there, so he was kind of training as an understudy while Jeffet Tanganga was injured. So he's versatile, he's tidy, he's confident, but I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he can do every week, as much as you are, I suppose.
Yeah, you broke this story this morning. I think someone else reported it initially, and you picked up on it. It was sort of your report, the one that was picked up widely by Norwich fans. You also sort of said later on that there have been a few clubs in for him, that Norwich had essentially won the race for him. What do you think, from Spurs' perspective, is the reason that Norwich City have sort of won that race? Do you think why has Ollie Skipp chose to join Norwich?
Yeah, I don't think it's a thing from Spurs' perspective, really. I think it's Skipp who's made the choice rather than Tottenham. I think essentially what happened was Skipp signed a new contract, a 4-year contract last month with Spurs, and one of the conditions for him signing was he said he wants to go out on loan and play a season. And I think actually Mourinho quite wanted to keep him at Spurs, and he's on record saying, you know, he wanted him there because he wants a good squad player around the place. But Skipp wanted to go out. He wants to play kind of 30 plus games next season. He wants to get, you know, a bit of scar tissue. He wants to get toughened up in, you know, ideally in the Championship. And I know that Fulham were really leading the chase for him before they went up, but actually once they got promoted, they became less appealing to Skipp because I think, you know, he might as well have stayed at Spurs and played a few games off the bench. What he really wants is to be playing every week in a kind of progressive passing side at the top of the Championship. And I know that he's looked at Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount in particular, some of the lads at Chelsea who kind of leapfrog from the second tier on loan to being Chelsea regulars and England regulars. So they're an example for him. He did his research, I was told. You know, he looked at the clubs, the managers. He had offers from around Europe. He had a couple of offers from Germany. He even had an offer from Trabzonspor in Istanbul. There are a couple of other Championship clubs in for him, including Reading and Middlesbrough, I think. So, yeah, he had loads of options because he's a good young player and an England under-21 international. But I think he looked at Norwich. He looked at the way they play. He looked at the fact that Farke's already won promotion and knows how to get out of that league. And I think he reasoned that he'll have a good chance of playing and playing the right kind of football as well.
Yeah, you said he did his research there. Is another factor to take into account perhaps the development of young players that Daniel Farke has shown? I mean, we could list a few. Max Aarons, who's been linked to Spurs himself. Todd Cantwell is probably another. He's almost developed a bit of a reputation for developing young players, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm sure that was a factor as well. And I mean, Skipp will know some of these guys from playing at under 21, England under 21 level as well. I'm sure he would have played with Cantwell and possibly Aarons as well. So, yeah, he'll be well aware of that. And yeah, as I said, he did his research, and I don't think, you know, the natural reaction to this from Spurs fans is, oh, you know, Spurs have sent him there because they're trying to do a deal for Aarons or something like that. But I don't think it was a case of Spurs kind of sending him to Norwich. I think it was a case of Spurs saying, you can go out. Here are the clubs that we're happy to send you to, which were numerous, and then Skipp making a call on it.
And we've seen the two clubs sort of do loan activity before. I think Marcus Edwards came to Norwich, didn't he, for a little while? So I wonder if that perhaps had an impact as well, whether Oliver Skipp spoke to him. In terms of, I know you said you haven't seen much of him play, but how important do you think it will be for him to get a full season out on loan somewhere where he can not only showcase his ability, but as you said earlier, sort of refine his game as well? Are there any particular areas that you'd like to see him improve to really sort of stake his claim for Spurs' first team?
Well, I think he probably needs to toughen up. Like, everyone knows what kind of player Jose Mourinho likes. You know, he tends to like kind of battle-hardened players in general, and particularly in the middle of the park. Skipp wants to play at number 6. Like, he sees himself as a holding midfield player, and he's really ambitious. You know, I know that he's kind of looked at the fact already that England don't really have a sort of guaranteed starter there at the moment, and so he's looked at that as a position that you know, is kind of there for the taking the national squad, which I think shows his ambition. So he wants to play in that role, and I think to play in that role in the Premier League and in the Jose Mourinho side, you know, you've got to have minutes under your belt. I think it's funny you mentioned Marcus Edwards, because I think the example of him and Kyle Walker-Peters, who are two of Spurs' most promising young players, are kind of a warning for a few of the younger lads in the academy. They look to them and they haven't really made great loan moves, or they haven't really played much, and they sort of stagnated. And Skipp was really keen for that not to happen. He just really wants to play. So I think, I think, as I said, you know, his all-round game will have to improve to get in the Spurs side, which is his ultimate aim. He'll have to get better at kind of every aspect of it. But I think, you know, the Championship is such a tough competitive league. You know, we saw that at the end of the season with that incredible kind of last few weekends. So he just wants to be in a position where he's under a healthy amount of pressure, and kind of getting minutes under his belt and improving with every game. And I think, yeah, as I've said, I think that's the reason he's chosen Norwich, and that's the reason he wasn't kind of keen to sit on the bench of Spurs, or even sit on the bench on loan at another Premier League club like Fulham.
Just a couple more from me. I mean, based on what you said there, it sounds like he's got a little bit of intelligence about him in terms of the research that you said he's done, and even to a wider point to the national team. Someone clearly very ambitious. Do you think he will have looked at this Norwich side and sort of worked out exactly where he fits into it?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, as I said, he did do his research before the move. I know that, and I think he has had a look at the managers. He's had a look at the teams, and you know, he'll be able. I mean, you know far more about Norwich than I do, but he'll presumably have seen that there's a place up for grabs in the position that he wants to play, and he'll be confident of going there and kind of challenging for that position straight away, I think. So I'm sure, I'm sure he's done his research on the team, and I'm sure he'll know, you know, how he wants to fit into Farke's side.
And just finally, obviously, I've got you here, so I've got to ask you to some extent. But Max Aarons, there's been lots of links with Tottenham with him, hasn't there? How do you see that one playing out? It's been thrown perhaps a little bit off course with the fact that Sam Byram at Norwich City is obviously the understudy right back is out for 10 weeks essentially. So again, do you think there's a possibility of a deal being done there between the two clubs this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a possibility. He's a name that just doesn't go away, and you always hear it in connection to Spurs. I mean, I've certainly heard it from people in connection to Spurs, but that was actually admittedly a while ago now when Pochettino was in charge. So I'm not really clear. My feeling on it, and this is partly guesswork, but my feeling on it is he's probably a player that the club quite likes because he's young, he's English, he's got good sell-on value, and those are the kind of players that Spurs have had great success at targeting in the past, particularly from clubs in the second tier. If you think back to, you know, kind of Bale, Lennon, Dele Alli, going all the way back, Huddleston, Dawson, you know, Spurs have always signed this kind of player, and it's always worked out fairly well for them. And they went back to it last summer with Jack Clark. So I suspect the club quite likes the idea of signing Aarons, and I suspect that Mourinho isn't completely sold on it. I think Mourinho desperately needs a new right back this summer, and Spurs are open to selling Serge Aurier, who's been the first choice. But Mourinho would probably prefer a more experienced player, probably prefer a slightly taller, slightly more physical player, I suspect. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think he'll be kind of top of Spurs' list, particularly because I know that Norwich, you know, aren't going to let him go on the cheap. So it's one to keep an eye on, but I would probably err on the side of saying it won't happen at the moment.
That's interesting. Dan, finally, if people want to see more of you, hear more of you, read more of your stuff, where can they find you in regards to all things Tottenham Hotspur and London football, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I do a bit of other clubs as well. I mean, I'm on Dan_KP on Twitter, and then obviously on the Standard Sport website. And if you're in London, don't forget to pick up the paper. It's free, so no excuse not to.
Exactly, and we all need to be picking up a paper in these times, don't we? Dan, thank you very much for joining us. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the PinkUn YouTube channel as well. Leave your comments below. What do you think of Oliver Skipp and his arrival at the club? Is he someone that you think could benefit Norwich City as they look to get back to the Premier League? Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you all again very, very soon.